Good morning. We're on Tuesday again, and we're still talking about Joseph. Now, we left up on a very sad note last time. Remember, Potiphar's wife had lied about Joseph, and Potiphar believed her, and then he put Joseph in prison. Now, that's what we're going to talk about today. Joseph in prison. And you can see, he looks pitiful, doesn't he? Wouldn't be hard to be in prison. Remember, he's been a slave. He's been a slave since he was just a really, really young boy, and he's gotten a little maturity on him, and now he's back in prison. Not only was he a slave, but he is a prisoner now. Well, in prison, Joseph was the same faithful, hard-working young man he had been in Potiphar's house. The keeper of the prison discovered that he had a good worker who could be trusted. He began to give Joseph jobs to do. The prison keeper put Joseph in charge of the other prisoners. One day, 2 new prisoners were put in the prison. One was Pharaoh's chief butler. The other was Pharaoh's chief baker. One night, each of them had a dream. The butler had seen a vine, and the vine had 3 branches. Then he saw those branches producing branches of ripe grapes. He took those grapes and pressed out their juice into Pharaoh's cup, which he had in his hand. Then he gave the cup to Pharaoh. Joseph listened to the dream and said, "The dream means that Pharaoh will send for you within 3 days and give you back your job. When you are back in the palace, think of me and tell Pharaoh that I have been wrongly put into prison. I was even stolen away from the land of the Hebrews." Then Joseph listened to the baker's dream. The baker had seen himself carrying 3 baskets on his head, one on top of the other. In the top basket, there were all kinds of cakes and baked food, but birds flew down and ate them. Joseph said, "This is what your dream means. In 3 days from now, Pharaoh will send for you and will have you put to death." 3 days later, it all came true. Pharaoh sent for his head butler and gave him back his old position, but he gave orders for the baker to be hanged. In prison, Joseph waited and waited to hear from the butler, but the butler had forgotten. For nearly 2 years, Joseph waited, hoping to be set free. Then one night, Pharaoh had a strange dream. None of the wise men could tell him what it meant. Suddenly, the butler remembered Joseph had told Pharaoh all about the way his dream had been explained, and Pharaoh ordered Joseph to be brought to him. Boy, that's something, isn't it? 2 years, and the butler hasn't thought of Joseph. "I have dreamed a dream that no one can explain. I have heard about you and your cleverness in understanding dreams," said Pharaoh. "God gives me understanding," Joseph answered. Pharaoh began, "I was standing on the riverbank when I saw 7 cows coming up out of the water. They were fat and well fed. They walked over into the meadow and began to graze. While I was watching, 7 more cows came up out of the river. They were the poorest, sickest, scrawniest cows I ever saw. They ate up the good fat cows and were still just as scrawny as they were before. Next, I dreamed that I saw a stalk of corn." And here is the Joseph Okay? Now Pharaoh is telling him about his dream. I saw a stalk of corn that had 7 full ears. I saw another stalk with 7 ears that had been parched dry by the hot wind from the desert. Those burnt, withered ears of corn ate up the good ears. God is showing Pharaoh what he's going to do, Joseph told him. Both dreams mean the same thing. The 7 fat cows and the 7 good ears stand for 7 years when the crops are going to be good and everyone will have plenty to eat. The 7 thin, sick cows and the 7 dried up ears of corn stand for the next 7 years when nothing is going to grow and people will starve. Then Joseph made a suggestion to Pharaoh. Men should be appointed to put away some of the food during the plentiful years. Then there would be food for the famine years. Pharaoh was amazed at what Joseph told him. Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph's cleverness that he put him in charge of all the food supplies. He made Joseph the greatest ruler in all Egypt, next to himself in importance. Wow! Joseph is gone from a young, boastful boy to his brothers, to a slave, from a slave to a prisoner, and now from a prisoner to the second most important person in Egypt. God is good. He was watching after Joseph all that time. But remember what it said? Joseph was faithful. Thank you for watching. See you next week.